Hey everyone, this is Bonna Bame, and this is my presentation on the conflict manual that I designed for resolving racial conflicts at the university level. For the purpose of this manual, racism is defined as the belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits, abilities, and characteristics, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority or inferiority to another race. So, as you can see from this definition, racism is deeply rooted in a person's identity and values. That means that when a racial conflict arises, it is very difficult to resolve. A racial conflict is considered to be a value conflict. An example of a racial conflict, which was also the inspiration behind creating this manual, can be seen in the events that developed at the University of Missouri on their campus last fall. A series of racially charged events took place during a 3-month time period, leading to the resignation of both the system president and the chancellor. The parties involved in this conflict used a power-based conflict management strategy in an attempt to negotiate and manage the conflict. While this strategy did lead to the resignation of 2 upper-level administrators, it was not successful in introducing the long-term change that was needed to disperse racism on campus. So that is where this manual comes in. This manual will restructure the dispute system design of the University of Missouri, changing the standard conflict management strategy from a power-based strategy to an interest-based strategy, while also outlining the importance of transformative mediation. There are 2 ways that this manual can be used, and the choice method should be based on what the user is attempting to accomplish. In the first method, it should be used for someone who is very unfamiliar with conflict management and is seeking to have a greater understanding of all the components that make up conflict, as well as strategies to resolve them. When using this method, the user will read the manual from cover to cover, gaining background knowledge on a specific conflict that led to the creation of this manual and learning the best steps to take to resolve similar conflicts. Method 2 is designed to be used by someone who has a basic knowledge of conflict and conflict resolution. In this case, the user should jump to the section titled Dispute System Design and proceed to work towards resolving their specific conflict using the principles laid out in those pages. The goals of this manual are as follows. Understand the definition of conflict, discover your conflict style, understand the effects of emotion on conflict, learn how conflicts escalate and become intractable, discuss how conflict can be de-escalated and transformed, understand dispute system design, learn how to incorporate an interest-based conflict management style, and finally, understand the importance of transformative mediation. There are a few key terms that will be discussed throughout this manual. Conflict is defined as an expressed struggle involving 2 or more interdependent parties who consider their goals to be incompatible and perceive prevention from others in achieving those goals. Conflict management is a process that involves developing effective strategies to minimize conflict. Values are a set of guidelines and standards that a person uses to measure what is important in one's life. Identity is an abiding sense of self and the relationship of the self to the world. It is a system of beliefs or a way in construing the world that makes life predictable rather than random. Culture is a system of socially created and learned standards for perceiving and acting that is shared by members of an identity group. Worldview is constructed through our social interactions with others. Our worldview also includes our identity and core values. Face is how a person wants to be seen in a social setting. A person's conflict style is their tendency to respond to conflict in a certain way. There are 5 categories of conflict styles: collaborating, competing, compromising, accommodating, and avoiding. Each of these styles fall on a spectrum ranging from cooperative to uncooperative and assertive to unassertive. It is important to be aware of what your conflict style is. For this reason, there is an activity in the manual that the user can use to assess their conflict style. You should complete the activity before continuing on any further in the manual. Emotion plays a major role in conflict. All conflict is inherently emotional. The most common emotions to be expressed in conflict are anger, contempt, shame, pride, guilt, and fear. Expressing underlying emotions can be instrumental in negotiating a resolution. For this reason, it is important to engage in emotional reappraisal. Reappraisal involves looking at the conflict to see how it can be reframed. Conflict escalation occurs when communication is used that is defensive, invokes criticism or avoidance, or contains statements of contempt. Once a conflict escalates, if the proper steps aren't taken to de-escalate the conflict, it will become intractable. This happens when attempts are made by one party to harm another, thus threatening a party's core sense of identity. This is often what happens in racial conflicts. Northrop wrote about the 3 characteristics of an intractable conflict. It is resistant to being resolved, it has some conflict intensifying features not related to the initial issues in contention, and it involves attempts to harm the other party. To draw in an example from the University of Missouri, it is evident that the conflict there was resistant to being resolved. Although the racially charged events occurred only during a short 3-month time span, it was clear that the racial climate was pre-existing on campus. The conflict had intensifying features not related to the initial issue in contention, with an example being the system president refusing to address protesters in an incident that occurred at a homecoming event. His lack of communication served to escalate the conflict. The 3rd characteristic involves attempts to harm the other party, which can be found in the claims of racial slurs. We have discussed how racial conflicts can escalate, so how can they de-escalate or be transformed? Northrop came up with 3 levels of change to move an intractable conflict towards a resolution. Level 1 involves both parties making changes that are related to their identities. Level 2 consists of change in the relationship dynamics, but no change in identity. And Level 3 involves changes in one's core sense of self. Dispute system design is the term used to describe the way in which an organization resolves disputes. There are 3 elements to a dispute: interests, rights, and power. So there are 3 types of conflict management strategies that make up dispute systems: interest-based, rights-based, and power-based. As seen by the diagram, the 3 elements are all interrelated. This means that the reconciliation of interests takes place within the context of rights, which takes place within the context of power. A power-based conflict management strategy is one that involves autocratic decisions, threats, coalition building, restructuring, and strikes. This is the strategy that was unsuccessfully used at the University of Missouri. The purpose of this manual is to lay the foundation for using the 2nd type of strategy, the interest-based strategy. Interest-based strategies use negotiation and various forms of facilitation to resolve disputes. Negotiation does not require third-party intervention, but is handled solely within the disputants. Facilitation encompasses any strategy that uses a third party to assist in dispute resolution. The 2 suggested methods of facilitation are coaching and mediation. A coach can help to reflect on the conflict at hand and consider possible resolutions. A mediator is a neutral third party who helps facilitate discussion between 2 parties. We will discuss the benefits of transformative mediation on the next slide. Transformative mediation differs from standard mediation in that the goal is not settlement, but rather empowerment. Transformative mediation empowers both people involved in the dispute by making them feel that they control the process and helping them to recognize the other's experience, which is particularly important in racial conflicts. Bush and Folger introduced the 10 distinguishing hallmarks of transformative mediation, which can be read on this slide. Although there are many advantages to solving disputes using the interest-based strategy that was discussed, it is not always feasible. In that case, a rights-based strategy should be used. Rights-based strategies start with investigation, then move to internal adjudication, which in a university setting would most likely consist of a review board, before moving to arbitration and litigation if necessary. As laid out in this manual, an interest-based conflict management strategy combined with transformative mediation should be utilized to resolve racial conflicts at the university level. In order to achieve the best results, mediation must be necessary for both parties to attend. Only if interest-based strategies fail should rights-based strategies be implemented. This last slide shows the sources that I use for my manual and presentation. Thank you very much for watching.